Right, recording. All right, so today we're going to talk about some classical apologetics, the existence of God. Let's see, we covered, let me see if it's going to work. Here we go. So far, we've covered some of the background. What do we believe? Uh, Christian Orthodoxy of the Gospel. Who is God? The Trinity, the nature of God, and the nature of Christ, and some heresies in the church today. I'm going to go over some classical apologetic arguments, for the existence of God. Why, does God exist? What can we do and share? So, I always start off with, do you have a chance to share? The last time it was, if you can get to who is Jesus to you, hand out a tract, witness to somebody. Anyone, anybody try to reach anybody?
I didn't ask that specifically, but I did try to reach out to a friend.
Oh yeah.
I tried passing the track to this elderly man, and he didn't want to know. Dude, I'm like, you sure, sir? That this can change your life? I tried and tried. I told him all kinds of stuff, not take it.
Some people are like that. Some people just resist. Like, don't,
Yeah, they want
I'm like, what is that? It's like, it's a car, it's a track, it's just a gospel track.
No, thank you. I'm good.
What if, there's some people that do resist. What happened with you?
Just online discussions again. I mean,
Sharon.
yeah, I mean,
Okay. I wanted to. So tonight we're talking about the existence of God. I actually was thinking about it. Like, what are the arguments? I actually walked up to one of the guys that I work out in the gym with all the time. I just walked up and I said, "Hey, I want to ask your opinion on something." He's like, "What's that?" I said, I just want to know what you think. Is there a God?" And he was like, "Of course." So then, of course, now he's got a positive. So I said, "All right, why?" So I asked him why he believed that there was a God. He was like, "Well, it's obvious." He's like, "What do you believe?" And I was like, "Well, I can't see him. He's not. Where is he? Where is he at?" He goes, "You can't see the wind, right?" And so I was just trying to see what argument he would give me to do it. And so then I asked him, "Are you a believer?" He's like, "Yeah." This is a guy that I go to the gym with all the time. So, uh, and then I was like, "Yeah, I got a couple good arguments." And I started giving him some of the stuff that we're going to talk about tonight. We in between sets, I would give him like, "Here's one." And then we go work out. He'd work out and come back. I was like, "Here's another one." And while you don't know, I said, "I got another one for you. I'll be back." You know. So, but it's just, I don't know. I was just kind of practicing, right, doing that. So, but sometimes to break those conversations open, it's just like, you know, I'm I approach it as inquisitive. Like, what do you think? Like, I'm trying to learn. Tell me what you know. What do you think? And then we start a discussion based on where they come from. So that's just how I. That's another way to break in and talk. Like, oh, I thought the phone woke up. Um, what about you, Gary? You get a chance to share with anybody this week? You try to pound on anybody's door?
Well, I had somebody share with me, a guy that used to work for me, and he was very complimentary of the way I managed him. It was, what I heard through that is that Christ shined through me.
Oh, okay.
And he moved away from Buffalo. He works up there. And he just really appreciated that what I showed him. And I just asked out, and he's a Christian. But yeah, like he told me, let me end with this. He told me, because he's living with somebody. He said, I know when I call you, I know the first question you're going to ask me. He said, so I had to get prepared because he wants to talk to me. He said, yeah, I'm going to ask him. I talked about that. So I said, you know where I'm coming from. But so, yes, in a way of just continuing to let God use you.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point too. Is that, I mean, that's where I struggle. I wish I. It's like, how do you behave? How do you present yourself to people? How do people see you? Like, I get so like stressed and upset at work about stupid things and like lose my cool, and it shouldn't. I mean, if you're trying to share, you're supposed to have the fruit of the spirit, the love, the peace, the self-control, the joy. Now they're not seeing that on me. So people at work, I told them about this, and listen to. They're probably laughing right now. But yeah, I mean, I struggle with that all the time. It's like, don't get upset. It's just stuff. Who cares? It's just people. It's just, you're supposed to, you're Jesus to them, right? I mean, if you're going to represent Christ and you're going to try to share, don't act the fool, right? So that's a great, I mean, that's probably one of my biggest struggle areas uh, that I wish I could be better. Go ahead. What you got?
So for the past 5 days, I've been woke at 4 o'clock in the morning. The Lord's been waking me up, and I've been just got out of bed. And I've been praying every time He wakes me up. I'm like, Lord, I'm right here. Listen. So He's been trying to.
Tell you something, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And then you're like, see, what gets me about that is like, what? Let's go. What is it? We're gonna part the sea. We're gonna see something miraculous, and just got to be patient. And let Him
Yeah.
speak to you. That's cool. You have any idea, or just you still?
I am still waiting to see what He says.
All right.
Um, I mean, this morning it was 3 instead of 4, but usually it's 4 o'clock in the morning. And I think 2 nights ago, I tried to go back to sleep, and my ears went, oh, like He's trying to tell me, don't go to sleep.
Not yet. Not yet. That's cool. That's cool. Oh, we'll look forward to see what you get from that, man. That's cool. All right. Well, let me go in. So the next thing we're gonna do is existence of God. Like I said, we covered what do we believe and uh, who is God. And I gave you a ton of scripture because if I'm going to tell you what God is like or what we believe, I try to back it up with scripture. So every point, I tried to give you some scripture that you can go, oh, okay, oh, okay, okay. Today's more. We're going to start getting into more like classical apologetics. And what is apologetics? Apologetics is basically defending the faith. Why do you believe things are true and giving reasons for why you believe it, right? It's that always be prepared to give a reason for the hope that you have within you, right?
So I use a different word, and you use both words. One that I don't defend the gospel. I give the reasons why I believe the gospel.
Absolutely.
You said that both are interchange, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Because God is big enough to defend Himself about me. But when I am giving reasons, I'm giving personal, like we talked about.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I believe why I would, because the question is, why do you believe what you believe? There's kind of so, because you know why they're asking.
Yeah.
That they want to understand. For those whose hearts are open, they want to understand. They want to believe, but they want to know why you believe.
Yeah. Yeah. What convinced you?
Yeah, what convinced you? What changed you? You did such an excellent job. You talked about like what convinced you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably the most powerful, especially for people that don't believe anything. Like, how do you believe that? How do you believe that fairy tale? And it's like I just tell them what compelled me and it drew me and made it hard for me. Yeah. Yeah. And everybody comes from a different place, and God prepares those people for that when you run into them.
I noticed though, when God does things differently than we're thinking, you know, like I got hurt, so I hurt my back a few months back, and I, actually it was like a year and a half ago when I came here. Um, I hurt my back really bad, and I went to the hospital. I was in emergency room for 6 hours.
Wow.
I came back. I came to this church for the first time. I walked through the doors, and I could barely walk. I went out front and he prayed for me, and the Lord healed me that day.
Oh wow.
I mean, my back felt like cold. It was hot. When I go back to my seat, I felt that my whole back.
Yeah. See, that's transformative stuff for people.
And
I try to share that, but like, how do you share that experience, right? Like,
down
you could tell them, I guess.
$5 in my bank account because I was working. I couldn't work.
Mm.
A week later, I get a job. So how does that work?
There you go.
From one job that wasn't paying hardly anything, I got hurt, and this is what I get. The Lord just blessed me.
This is good testimony right here. This stuff you share with people, right? Absolutely. Like it say, by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony, right? So that's good stuff. All right. So hopefully today, yeah, hopefully I give you
You never
reasons
know,
for.
man. You get hurt, something happens to you, you don't know what's behind it, what God has planned behind that.
Yeah.
You really don't.
Yeah. He'll use. Yeah, testimony for sure. So, like I said, today we're going to cover some basic arguments for that I've used. Like when I start a conversation with somebody, if I'm trying to have like a logical argument, if you get thinky people, and they want to have logical arguments. For me, one I just is just basic. This is the first thing I told that guy at the gym when I walked up to him. I just sat there and I just turned around, was like looking around. He's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Why is there something instead of nothing?" Right? I said, if all science believes that everything, you roll it all back, you roll the universe back, it all comes down to a ball, it all comes into a singleton, and then I can't even say before that because time, space, and matter all came into existence at that point. But without that, prior to that, when that wasn't the case, there was a time where that wasn't the case, right? There's nothing. And he was like, yeah, it was this empty space. I was like, no, it wasn't even empty space. There was no space. It was nothing. There was nothing. Zero. He's like, oh yeah. So I always say, and I'll bring it up. And why is there something said as nothing? I said either no one or nothing. Either no one or nothing created everything out of nothing, or something created everything out of nothing. And what makes more logical sense?
All right. Yes, sir.
I mean, no one, nothing created everything, or someone, something. I mean, okay, at least give me the flying spaghetti monster. Give me something. It makes So that's the first thing is something had to create everything. That's just a basic. You don't have to be. You don't need some theological premises. That's just why is stuff here.
Exactly. When you, and that's always interesting. That's how you can tell when somebody is open. If they don't, like I had a guy who, he graduated college with me, and we talk sometimes, and I'll read in scripture, and he'll start talking. So I don't believe it. You. So what I realized was I got to give him the word, and he's going. God promised His word will not come back to Him void. When I give him the word or whatever I don't care what you give him. The point is, I don't want to believe it. So
Yeah,
I'm going to, and he's not cussing at me per se. He's like, okay, F this and all that other kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, we got to go through this one. All right. But he always calls me. It's interesting. He calls me and spends time on the phone talking to me.
yeah,
Because he knows what he's going to hear when he calls.
yeah,
But and he tries to get me in scriptural argument. I said, I ain't doing that. I said, we just gonna read the word, whether you accept it or not is on you.
yeah.
But I'm gonna tell you what the word says.
Tell you what it is.
That's it.
Either you can get it or not.
That's exactly right.
But God will prepare that ground, right?
That's exactly
It's frozen ground. You can't plant a seed in frozen ground. You got to prepare the ground, right? So
Yep.
God will do that.
Amen.
So so basic logic, existence of God. Why is there something? Then there's these classical apologetic arguments to go through. There's what they call the cosmological argument, the teleological argument, the moral argument, and then the ontological argument, which I consider weak. It's it has value in it, but it's just not very. To me, it's not very convincing. I don't know. Maybe that's the one. I'm not convinced. I'll use my Matt Dill honey. I'm just not convinced.
Not convincing
Yeah,
for you.
yeah.
Got it.
So, all right. So the first one is called the cosmological argument. There's two versions of it. Probably the most popular is what's called the Kalam cosmological argument. If you ever watch any William Lane Craig videos, he's a big proponent of this. He professes this one a lot. It's actually, I believe, it was Muslim scholars that came up with this is why God exists. So it has three premises, right? The first one is that everything that begins to exist has a cause. So if anything starts to exist, it has a cause. That makes sense, right? Something caused it. Well, scientifically, and everybody generally believes the universe began to exist, and so okay, they've even had you know astrophysicists and all that. Can you have an eternal universe? Can it bounce and rebound and all? And they can't find anywhere way the universe is eternal. I mean, still probably have people that believe that, but the majority of people would say the universe began to exist from everything we see, right? It's breaking down, it's heading to heat death, and you roll it back and it has a start. So it began to exist. Well, from the first two, if everything that begins to exist has a cause, and the universe begins to exist, therefore the universe has a cause, right? So there's got to be a cause, and we see that cause as God. I mean, that's just the beginning. I just use that as an argument.
Sure.
Something caused the universe to exist. Okay, like most. So that's the cosmological argument. Leibniz had a variation of this and said everything that exists has a reason for its existence. The universe exists, so therefore the universe has a reason. They're similar, right? But I use this one a lot. Like something caused it. What caused it? Right? And then if I get them to accept that and they go, oh, okay, then I'll give them another one. Then I'll go to the next one. Are there any guys any questions on that? That's pretty straightforward, right? So all right. Another one that I'll give them is what's called the teleological argument. It's basically design arguments that says, hey, the universe looks, if you look at it, it's super complex. There's some things that are called irreducibly complex, like it has a minimal number of parts to make it work, like a mousetrap. They say you got to have the spring and the hammer and the latch. I think somebody broke it down like there's four parts, and then somebody argued, well, I can make it in three. Okay, well, it's three. Still, if you just have the arm, it doesn't do you any good, right? So uh, this, and if you look biologically at a very, you know, close level, like microscopic level, things are so complex. The eye, there's like biological machines in your body. Um, I mean, if you go look at it, even kids in school, if you're studying that, you can't deny that. I mean, it's so complex. Yours was I'm gonna put some plane parts on the runway. How many times we got to blow it up before it turns into a plane, right? It just because you have parts doesn't make it. And then time doesn't solve your problem either. There's James Lamb, I think is his name. He's not a origin scientist, but he's very adamant. He's a Christian, and they always go, "You're being biblical." And he's like, "No, I'm being scientific. Like time's your enemy, right? Like this stuff only lasts so long. You gotta piece it all together quick. Like our problem when we're trying to make chemicals is not that we need more time. We got to hurry up because you only have so much time to piece all the chemicals and make these specific reactions, and then we have to physically remove special things and put special things in to make it all work, and still we can't do it." So he's put a challenge out to all the origin of life scientists. James Land, I'm probably going off on a tangent, but we got time today. Um, and he puts a challenge out that says, prove it. You just show me here. Here's the chalk. I'll be like, write it on the board. He's an organic chemist. Write it on the board and show me. Show me how you're going to do this. Right? Not that he's just show me how it's possible. Anyway, so you see this massive design. Well, if I see a building, I go, there must be a builder. If I see a really wonderful musical piece, I don't go, "Ooh, that was just random noises from rocks falling." No, I mean, there's a composer.
Just it's so amazing to me that people will accept that the world came out of a big bang. But when that's like you said, that building, what's the chance that building built itself? I mean, it's illogical that people will believe that the universe came as a result of some kind of random explosion, but they'll accept that because they don't want to accept the creative philosophy. The create since if I don't want this, I'll accept this. That's kind of the way it works. I don't I don't accept that truth, so therefore I will take this lie.
Yeah, yeah. But if it's so designed, it implies a designer. So therefore, we think a designer, like it makes more logical sense.
Yeah.
All information we see, every message that we get, every encoded
That's
message.
with the atheist people. They
Yeah.
don't believe in nothing. So therefore they're just believing that Big Bang theory.
Yeah. And that's okay. And I walk away from people and tell them, what? Yeah, you're going to have to give account for what you believe. That's the bottom line. You will have to give. So what you choose to believe, you have to give an account for. Now, whether or not you think there's a God or not, if you're wrong and there is, you have to answer to it.
That's Pascal's wager. That's Pascal's wager,
I
right?
was wondering if you're going to include that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's even worse than you know ontological arguments. I figured not, but
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's like Pascal's wager is like if you believe and you're wrong, what do you have to lose?
Right.
If you don't believe and it's true, what do you have to lose?
Exactly.
Right? So it's like that's the wager. It's like it's better to err. That's almost like the better, but it's not really faith. It's more like lesser of two evils, right? It's like voting. So, and yeah, the one other argument I was making was every time you see a message or encoding, we know that comes from a mind,
Correct.
right? It just,
Correct.
I mean,
It's not random. It came from some thought.
yeah, it's like Frank Turek uses like Mount Rushmore. Oh wow, isn't that amazing how the erosion just made up all the presidents' faces, right? Right?
Somebody might do that.
Or like if you,
oh, it's dynamite.
That's right. This
yeah,
that might the faces came in the
yeah. Or if you came downstairs, remember Alphabets, the cereal had the letters in it? And he said if you came downstairs and the box was turned over and you saw a message on there, take out the garbage, Mom. You wouldn't say, wow, I just fell out of the box. That was Mom putting a message on the table. Mom, right? So that's the concept of the teleological arguments, right? So the fine tuning argument takes that to another. I think it was William Paley, that was talking about the watch. If you ran into a watch in the desert, you wouldn't say, "Oh, that just magically said, oh, someone must have came through and dropped their watch." All right, that's where the blind watchman comes from. From is it Dawkins wrote that, I believe. Um, but so the fine tuning argument is actually a really good argument, and I've used this many times. Right, the fine tuning argument, it's a design argument, a teleological argument that suggests the existence of a designer, God, is based on the observation that conditions necessary for life in the universe appear to be carefully balanced or fine tuned. And this argument can be broken down into 3 points. The universe is finely tuned for life. There's all these things that if we didn't have all this specially tweaked Goldilocks, I call it the Goldilocks effect, or maybe I stole that from somebody. The universe is finely tuned for life. Well, the fine tuning implies someone set it up that way and finely tuned it. Therefore, we think a fine tuner exists. Somebody did it, and we see that as God. And I don't expect you to remember all these, but literally, this is what's great about ChatGPT. I was like, ChatGPT, give me all the fine tuning things, right? And it just spit out a list. Give me some more. Give me some more. And I came up with a list. So, if you can remember one or two of these, or just spit them out when I'm doing it, that's what I do. The constant of gravity. The strength of the gravitational force is finely tuned to allow for the existence of stars, planets, galaxies. If the constant of gravity was slightly stronger or slightly weaker, the universe would either collapse upon itself or make it impossible. They would just spew, the stuff would just spew, it would never form back together, right? So you wouldn't have planets, you wouldn't have stars, you wouldn't have any of the objects in the universe you see. The cosmological constant. I think I doubled this one up. The cosmological constant is a term related to the expansion of the universe. If the cosmological constant were slightly different, the universe would either expand too quickly or too slowly. Again, no stars, no galaxies. If it was going too fast, it would never combine together. If it was going too slow, it would never. It would all just be in one. It'd be like a junkyard. You'd have a cosmic junkyard. All right. The strong nuclear force. There's these atomic forces and various forces that we study. The strong nuclear force is responsible for binding protons and neutrons together in the nucleus of an atom. If the strong nuclear force was slightly weaker, they wouldn't hold together. They would just spread out, right? Then the atoms would not exist. If they're slightly stronger, then the elements would be too stable, and nuclear fusion would not occur, preventing formation of stars. We wouldn't be able to get other things. We would just have one thing, right? Because it would hold together. So finely tuned. The other weak nuclear force. The weak nuclear force is responsible for radioactive decay and the fusion of hydrogen into helium in stars. If the weak nuclear force was slightly stronger or weaker, the formation of heavier elements, right? You couldn't get the other heavier elements necessary for life. You wouldn't have them. We would just, what is it, hydrogen and maybe helium. That's it. You wouldn't have anything. The neutron-proton mass difference. The mass difference between neutrons and protons is finely tuned to allow for the formation of stable atomic nucleus. If the mass difference were slightly different, the elements necessary for life wouldn't exist. The electroweak force. And these are just, we hit the lottery on all these. The electroweak force is responsible for the interaction between electromagnetic and weak forces. If the electric weak force was slightly stronger or weaker, the production of carbon and oxygen in stars would be disrupted, preventing the formation of organic molecules. You don't have carbon and oxygen, you're not going to have life. Everything's carbon based. Right? I threw all these out. The fine structure constant determines the strength of the electromagnetic force, the initial conditions of the universe. Okay, let's talk about that. Such as the amount of matter and energy that's out there, are finely tuned to allow for the formation of galaxies, stars, and planets. If the initial conditions were slightly different, it wouldn't form; it would collapse. Right? We talked about carbon and oxygen. That's what ChatGPT gives you duplicates. We talked about the expansion rate. How about the moon? Where the moon is. The moon's stability and influence on the Earth's tides and rotation are finely tuned to allow for the existence of life. We wouldn't have life on the planet. If the moon were slightly closer or further away, the tides and rotation of Earth would be disrupted, making it difficult for life to exist. You may not have life.
Yeah, it's perfectly at the right distance. That's how God made it. If it's just slightly a little bit.
Goldilocks.
A little bit closer, we freeze.
Yeah.
The whole Earth is frozen.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. You said it right there, right? Distance from the sun. Right? Exactly. Be no same thing with the atmosphere. If the gas and the temperature necessary for life weren't there, you'd be toast. There was some magnetic field. I'm just saying all these things. And usually what I do, the amount of lithium, the speed of light, cosmic background temperature, the abundance of carbon, water, the sun's lifetime, right? I go through all these with folks. And I just said, look, I present it this way. Okay, like if you won the lottery, I'd be like, wow, man, that's awesome. How blessed are you, right? But like if you won the lottery 28 times in a row, just you, what's up, man?
Man, you wouldn't believe that was right.
I'm like, you know somebody down at the lottery place? Can I get in on this?
You do know.
Yeah, you know so that's the whole point of the design argument. If you've got it's one thing like sure, somebody will win the lottery. Enough people play. You have a very high probability of just you winning. But if everybody plays, and that leads to why they have the multiverse stuff, right? That's the multiverse theory comes in and said, well, this is so compelling. Yeah, yeah, 28 times in a row. Well,
You know what the thing is for that?
What?
300 million to 1. We winning the lottery.
300 million to 1? Yeah, do it 28 times in a row. Yeah,
Imagine that.
yeah.
That's crazy.
So it's like when they get really high and everybody at work bought a ticket. I was like, I'll get one. It's like, because, or if they go in the group, I'm like, look, I'll join in the group because if you guys all win and retire and I'm stuck here, I can't handle that. I can't handle that.
After like this kid, you knew when
Yeah.
everybody walked out.
Like, I'm the only one.
I was like, I don't want to be the only one left. Oh, man.
So you play out of self-defense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's insanity defense is what that is. It's insanity insurance. I'll go crazy if that happens. If I'd have just given you they were buying like so many tickets that we put in $5. It's like, okay, I'll play. I'll play. Um, so to combat this, they'll come up with the multiverse theory, right, which says there's an infinite number of universes, right, and because of that, every possible permutation that could ever happen, every possible combination that you could ever have exists out there. We just happen to be in the one that won, right? That's their story. A couple problems with that. One is you can't have an actual infinite in reality. Like you can't have an infinite number of objects. You'll never get to the end. Like you count to infinity on how long will it take you, right? It just you never get there. So you can't actually iterate and have an actual infinite reality. It just doesn't make logical sense. Uh, and the other one I always say is, okay, well, what's your proof for that, right? And then they'll ask me, what's your proof for your point of view, and then I'll give them miracles and Jesus came and eyewitnesses and all the, what is, and I'll give them that.
Some of your testimony,
Yeah,
things that Lord done in your life.
yeah, like you're with your back and that. Yeah. Yeah, he's done some miraculous things for me too, so I do share that occasionally. Yeah. Um, but all right, so that was the design argument, right? Just if you can remember one or two and just say, well, there's all these things, and just I meant there's like 20. You can go Google them. I just I give them like the strong and weak nuclear force or distance from the sun or gravitational constant, all these things. And I just use that, and then I'll give them this third argument of why does God exist. So we started with the universe began to exist, the universe had a cause. Then I give them the design, like everything seems finely tuned. It looks really designed to me. What do you think? And then I give them the moral argument. Moral argument. Uh, and I probably should have put this at the end. When I talk about morals, is like where does morality come from? One of the common objections you'll hear, I just had this in there. I probably should have put it at the end. It's called the Euthyphro dilemma. Is what they call it. There's a guy Euthyphro. I think he's Greek or whatever, and he posited the thing. He said, "Is something good? You know, okay. Let's see if is something good because God commands it, or does God command it because He's good? Like, does God arbitrarily pick what's good, right? Or is it good because God says it? So basically, it's like they're giving you this two horns of win, right? So if it's good because God commands, He can just pick something else, right? It's arbitrary, right? Uh, Basically, divine command theory is a response to that. And here's the perspective that because you're going to get this asked you at some point. Well, is it just arbitrary, or why couldn't it be something else? That the answer is that there is no external standard of good. There is no external standard of good beyond God's nature. God is the standard, and His commands are not arbitrary. He just doesn't make them up, but they're based on His goodness because He is good. And God is the ultimate source of morality. He is the ultimate good. Morality comes from Him, and His nature is the standard of goodness. Who He is the standard of good. Thus, His commands are inherently good because they align with His nature. Everything He commands aligns with who He is because He's good. The Christian answer to the Euthyphro argument is that something is good because God commands it, and God commands it because He is inherently good. Right? God's nature and His commandments are inseparable. They're the same. Remember, we talked about all His attributes in His existence, everything He is, and all His essence and being are one and the same. So He is goodness, right? God's nature and His commands are inseparable, and His commands are not arbitrary, but rooted in His goodness. So whenever you run into that, it's like God just made it up, or what if God picked something else? Well, He wouldn't. Then He would be different. He presents those things because that's who He is, and He is good. So I'm just throwing that out there. That's a common objection that you run into. They try to get you in that. They try to trick you. All right, so the moral argument I usually present them is the argument is based on the observation that human beings have an innate sense of morality. And I brought this up when I told that guy I had something else to tell him in the gym. I said, is there ever a place where rape is good? Give me a scenario where rape is good, or murdering the innocent. How about torturing puppies? All right, when is that good? And he was like, I said, oh, so it's absolutely that. Those are things that that's just one of those things that people that are ornery and say it's all relative. And I said, okay, so rape is good. Oh no, rape is never. Well, when is rape good? It could be good. No, it'll never be good. Oh, so it's absolutely wrong. It's always absolutely wrong. They kind of corner themselves. They try to play both sides of the fence, and then that one kind of corners them because there's certain things that they absolutely know to be true. And then I say, why does everybody believe that? How do we all know? He's like, and the guy I was talking to said it was just in you. I was like, where'd that come from? Right? So the argument is based on the observation that human beings have an innate sense of morality and that certain moral principles and values are universally recognized and considered objectively true. The moral argument can be presented in several forms, but a common one is the following. There are objective morals and values and duties, right? Objective moral values and duties must have their source in something transcendent, outside, some morally perfect being, i.e. God, therefore God exists. So it's got to come from somewhere. And if you just say, oh, it's evolution, it's like, well, that's like saying vanilla. Vanilla is the best flavor there is. That's it. It's just your objective preference of what you think. It's arbitrary. Nothing.
Their subjective preference.
Yeah. Your subjective present. Thank you. Yeah. It's like you just picking something because you want to pick it. And even if everybody agrees, I mean, you had a whole country in Germany, right?
Yep.
The whole country believed that. The whole, there was a time where slavery was all over the world, right? It,
Don't make it right.
yeah. Just because a lot of people believe it doesn't make it right. So it is wrong objectively, and so that has to come from somewhere. And it's like they a good example they give is like they give you like I was at the gym and this girl had a tattoo of Jordan on her arm. I saw the pattern. I was like, is that Jordan? Like, yeah, she's Jordanian. No, the country.
Oh, the country Jordan.
And I recognized it, right? But that's what maps do, right? How do you know if the map's good? If it's a good map or not? Like we see maps that are wrong. Like when they represent Africa on a map, it's always shrunk because it's in the middle, and they spread they've taken the ball and they spread it out. So Africa's like in relative terms on a flat rectangular map, it's smaller than it really is. But is that how do we know it's a bad representation? Because it represents a standard,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so the better you align with the standard, the better the map.
Correct.
It's the same thing with morality. So that's what I go to is where does that come from? And they know, everybody knows deep down, and we all have that same belief system.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
Yeah.
So those are the three like main arguments I give for why God exists. And usually when I'm sharing and I go through it, I share those. The universe began to exist, and this is why. I see all this stuff. It looks like design is super complex. How do you explain it? And then if they give me a multiverse, I go, can't have an infinite. How do what caused that? What caused that to start causing? Something's got to be eternal. Something's got to be forever to make it all work. And then I close with the morality argument. And from there, those are pretty compelling arguments for why God exists. So if you can latch on to the one or some of those or remember some of that, whatever, those are good arguments for why does God exist. And that gets me to step one, which is I got them to, okay, now we have, okay, maybe the God exists. Then I can take them to the next level. One more thing. Okay. I wanted to detail here. So in this moral argument, the first premise is supported by the observation that certain moral principles and values are universally recognized and considered objectively true. For example, most people agree that it's wrong to torture innocent children for fun, and that there's an objective difference between right and wrong. There is some right and wrong. You're wrong. Oh, is that absolutely true? Right? The second premise is based on the idea that the objective moral value and duties cannot arise from a materialistic or atheistic worldview. If there's no transcendent moral perfect being, then moral values and duties are merely the product of human opinions. That's what you're talking about, chocolate or vanilla. Cultural norms are evolutionary process. However, this would mean that there is no true objective basis for morality, and then morality is ultimately subjective and relative, and it's all bunk. You can't. There's no foundation. There's no validation for them believing anything. Right? How can you even trust what you believe if your mind's just chemicals in motion? You don't know. How do you know anything you think is true, or how do you know anything you believe is true? I mean, if it's all just molecules flowing around, where's the right and wrongness of that? It just I'm not saying they're immoral. I'm just saying they don't have any basis for it. All right, and then the third premise follows from the first two. If there are objective moral values and duties, and if these values and duties must have their source in a transcendent moral perfect being, then logically it follows that God exists. In conclusion, the moral argument for existence of God is a compelling argument that seeks to demonstrate the existence of a necessary, transcendent, morally perfect being which Christians believe to be God. By appealing to the universality and objectivity of moral values and duties, the argument challenges the assumptions of materialistic and atheistic worldviews and offers a foundation. It gives a reason why you can believe in have theistic beliefs. It's foundational for taking them to the next level. Like you said, you can't just go right to the Bible, but if I give them, well, do you think a God exists? I start, is there truth? I go as far back as it takes to get me to have some kind of, I need a foundation. I need to put a slab down. All right, the last one of these is what's called the ontological argument. put weak up there again. I don't know. I think this one's weak. I'm not convinced. So the ontological argument uh, was kind of championed by Anselm of Canterbury in 1033 to 1109. So his argument is that God, he starts with God is defined as the greatest possible being possessing all perfections. It's the perfect being theology, that God is the perfect being. Uh, and then he goes from there, existence is a perfection, right? Implying that God exists as part of his nature. Because if God did not exist, he would not be the great, like if he had this great thought of who God is, but if he didn't exist, it'd be better if he existed, right? It'd be even greater if he existed. He would not be the greatest possible being, as existence is perfection. Therefore, God must exist, and his non existence would contradict his nature as the greatest possible being. My argument against this is God may just not exist, and that's what you're trying to prove. So it's like it's just a thinking exercise. Just because I think it doesn't mean it is.
How do you get somebody to sit still long enough to say that on
Well, yeah, I mean, it's that God's a perfect being, but if he didn't exist, he wouldn't be perfect, so he's got to exist. Well, maybe he just doesn't. Well, that's what you're trying to prove. That's why I think it's weak.
It's interesting. Me and my wife were having a discussion this morning. We were talking about academia. And I'm an electrical engineer, so I'm strictly science. And when you get me into a literature class, I can't stand those because they're subjective.
Yeah,
You can take two professors that have the same degrees in literature, and you can hand a paper to that one, and that person will say that's junk, and another person will say that's great.
yeah,
Hand them a paper that's algebra, it's either right or wrong.
yeah.
Period.
1+1 is 2.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And I said, when you're dealing with people who basically, you can get two people who think on. If you get two academics that want to argue over something, they'll make arguments like that to each other.
Yeah.
Where they'll start talking back, and you'll lose the common person because they won't. It's like like I said, who will sit still long enough to even listen to people talk about that versus people who want to argue about philosophy and where things come from and how were things made. They want to argue about it.
Yeah.
They don't really want to
get an answer.
They want to argue about it.
Yeah, they just want to discuss
They
it.
want to be right. They don't want to be wrong in what they're thinking.
Correct.
They're showing their intellect, right?
Yeah,
They're
exactly,
flexing their intellect.
If I can argue you down and show you that I don't believe you no matter what you say, that makes me right.
Yeah.
That's like I was talking about to the gentleman who will talk now and then, and his whole goal is to
Outjoust you.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly the way he is.
Make a great point, and yeah.
Exactly. But it's fun because at the same time, he's called me for a reason.
Yeah. Well, God's probably poking at him. That's good.
Yep.
All right. So, like I said, this one, I mean, it is an interesting argument. It has interesting concepts behind it. There are, like Gavin Ortland, he likes this argument, not for apologetic reasons, just but for the value of what it tells you. I just don't think it's very convincing to someone that's just not there. It relies too heavily on abstract reasoning and neglects biblical revelation. It may lead to a God concept shaped by human intellect rather than biblical revelation. What are your thoughts? You've seen this before. What do you think about it?
Well, I mean, I would agree that the thought that immediately came to mind to bounce off of his point is that certain arguments work better for certain people. So for the layman, you're going to do best with the moral argument or cosmological argument. With more scientific minded people, teleological tends to be more compelling. And then usually philosophy students find it interesting, so that'll be like my gateway
Gotcha.
argument, but it's never the hard hitter. So I think it's weak in that remark. I just don't think I don't think it's weak in the sense that it's useless.
So
But
you kind of give it to him as like a Snicker bar. And
yeah, it's
Give 'em a
kind
little-
of interesting because it's
little
a
snack.
thought process of like, because arguing the existence of something based off of its nature is interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting concept.
Yeah, I mean, you're theorizing and thinking conceptually
Yeah.
about interesting topics. Maybe it opens their mind to other possibilities, and yeah, if you're a thinker like that, if you're an analyzer and you like conceptualizing and digging in, this would be an interesting argument to go into. What's the, I think what was it? It was the perfect island. Think of the perfect
Yeah,
island.
I mean, and then you get into the whole like actualization. What does that mean? And God can exist in one potential universe. That means he would exist. You just have to. It gets really deep, but it's not just it's not just simply that he's defined as having to exist and you kind of think him into being.
Mm.
And not it is, but it goes deeper than you think. But I find it compelling, but it's very hard to get people to think on that level.
We'll have to go through it one day. Maybe you can give me a deeper meaning of it. I just they threw it out at seminary when I was there. They're like, this one's out there. It's weak.
You're not going to get people with that one, but
I'm a nuts
it's
and bolts
weak. But
ones and zeros guy. So it's like for me, give me something in reality, that I can
yeah, you
that
can
I
point to.
know.
Yeah,
Like I need something to stand on. This is like just completely abstract thinking.
that's what I say. I think saying it's a Snickers bar is a good term for that. Is like it's a door opener for certain people who tend to think that way.
Yeah, and maybe it gives them a chance to shoot it down. Gives them a
Yeah,
win. Gives them a win. Yeah, well, just because you think it doesn't mean it is. Okay, well, let me show. What about these? Right? Maybe it gives them a win before you go on. All right, but that was basically all the things I had for existence of God. So if you can think of the universe beginning to exist, uh, everything looks designed. There's probably a designer, right? Every message we get has a mind. And then morally, where did it come from? You'll get a lot of it evolved. Oh, we just evolved that way. And then I say, I don't know, man. I mean, if I'm going to win, I'm not going to be altruistic. I'm not going to share. I'm not going to be kind and charitable. I'm coming in with the biggest gun I got, taking all your stuff. You could be my slave and work over here, but I'm taking everything. That's how I would see it. You know, and so my nature wouldn't be to be good. It would be to get more, right? I thought it was the survival of the fittest, and so y'all, how is being the strongest giving it all away, right? I mean,
That's right.
and it just then they go, huh? Okay, I said, if I could overpower everybody, I would just take it all, right? If there was no God, and it was all about who's the most powerful, whoever's got the biggest gun is the winner, right? So, um, anyway, but I use this a lot. I use these arguments a lot, and I could probably deliver it in 5-10 minutes. I'll just go through this stuff, and that's kind of the segue. Then they'll at least go, okay, maybe there's a God. So, well, if there's a God, then I go into how would he communicate with you, right? And we'll get into some of that later when we talk about uh, was it the 12 points that show that Christianity is true, what Turk and Geisler did. We'll go into that. There's some of those things that kind of goes through that. Like this is kind of in the middle, and he's got the surge stuff. He gives a couple arguments that he uses for why he thinks there's a God, and then how would God communicate, and why is the Bible true? And we'll go through some of that when we get there. Uh, but from that, my whole point is to try to get you guys to maybe get some of this in you. So that's why I would like to do the role play. Um, so, anybody want to come up and be ready to answer some of the arguments we talked, or at least one or two, or maybe make some points?
I mean, it'd be basically cheating if I didn't.
Yeah. Well, I know you know it. We've gone
Yeah, I
over it
mean,
many times. So, thoughts?
Well, it's always interesting to me. And one thing, I'm going to be honest with you. When I come to this class, I always say, Lord, everybody has a way. You use different people different ways. And I'm not the person that is going to sit there and quote this stuff to people. Like I said, one is I don't have the patience and I don't see the value. Not nothing said different. That's the wrong that Jimmy said that way. It's always valuable, but that's not what I think I'm called to do. Because just like I keep referring to the gentleman who I was talking about, it gets to a certain point. I said, you're going to believe what you want to believe. The Bible tells me that when the seed is spread, some fall on fertile ground. Some falls on rocky ground, some falls on fertile land. Who determines that? Not me. My job is to spread the seed, not to determine where the seed lands at. And then it also talks about for the people who refuse to hear what you're supposed to do. So I said, okay, that's kind of, because there was a time when I first came to the Lord, I was real zealous about having out tracts.
Hmm.
And I used to hand out some of those tracts that said, you don't believe what this said, you're going to hell.
Mm.
And God convicted for me personally. Say, I always try to make things personal because just because it's not right for Gary to do that doesn't mean it's not right for you to do. But what's right for you is some things
Yeah.
God doesn't call you to do.
That's why I like those what if tracks, because it's not like you're going to burn. It's like, what if it's true?
Right.
Just
Right.
what if? I mean, what if I'm wrong?
Right.
What if I'm right?
Right. If they find something that triggers thought versus if you don't do it this way, and again,
And there's
I'm
some
not
guys that
saying
go out and,
those tracks may work for somebody else. I don't know.
yeah.
It's just that where I find my fit, what I think God's called me to do in terms of it. That's why it's important to me, my testimony, and how I walk. Now, I need to know scripture because I want to know the reason why I have hope, the reason why I believe what I believe. It is scripture. But I'm not one to go find books that back up the Bible, and people are good at that.
Yeah. There's some people that are way, yeah, for me, it's just like, if you're going to like grab onto that rock, right? Can I get you to calm down?
Mhm.
Just let's talk. Can I not so much move you off that rock, or maybe give up that,
Sure.
at least make you wonder, maybe holding on to this rock
A
isn't,
lot of times it's good to listen more to that person, what they're coming across before you start giving the message. A
yeah.
lot of times you have to listen to what they're saying.
And what I'm looking to do is try to get them to, like, if you're just hanging on to something, blindly hanging on with all that you've got, and that there might be an answer over here. Can I get you to loosen up and just look? Can I at least get you to think, hey, look, you don't have to hold on to the rock so hard. Let's look over there. What do you think? Just to pique their interest. And that's basically what I try to do with this, right? I don't think I'm going to convince them. I'm just trying to get them to literally, what if? For me, it's a probability argument. Can I bump up the probability that you see what I'm convinced. I've been convinced, and I think it's the way, the truth, and the life. I think Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. I think that's the way to salvation. I think that's the winning lottery numbers. I'm just trying to give them out. I can give out. It's not like I have to share it. Everybody that gets the right lottery numbers wins the same prize I do. So I'm not.
Well, the important thing is with that perspective, sometimes you're knocking down, you don't necessarily get them across the finish line, so to speak,
Yeah.
but you knock down the wall, you move closer to the line.
That's all I'm trying to do.
The things they were hanging on that kept them from hearing the word, they may never tell you that, but the next time they run into someone else and they want to share, that is no longer an obstacle because God's already used you to deal with that obstacle.
Yeah, it's
Now
objections.
they become open to the gospel.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You never know where people are at and what's going on in their lives. That's that whole thing about share and let God be responsible for the results.
So does anybody want to take a shot, or do you want to? I'd like to do it, or we could just do it together, pair up, just one on one, and just share. Why I think there's a God.
Why not?
You want to do
I
it?
like you when you start.
Okay.
Yeah, why not? We did it last time.
All right. I could do that.
Unless you want to say
So this ain't gonna wake up. It's went to sleep
I
on me
know
again.
he enjoyed it.
So
I enjoy it.
Well, he knows this
this is
stuff.
this is the stuff I like.
He loves this stuff. If I can get this phone to wake up.
See, God wouldn't have me talk to people because he would bring people together and love to do that, and then you would hit that niche right where a person falls at, and you'd be able to minister to them where I wouldn't be able to.
I think it's a balance. I think it's very satisfying to get into personal testimony. Like we can sometimes feel anxious to kind of get into it, but a lot of these arguments they set the foundation for you to get to that moment. I think so. I do think it's very important to know some of this stuff because some people that would not like they don't want to hear your testimony, but then you'll hit them with like one of these like do you think there's morality, and that'll kind of stop them in their tracks for a second. And that kind of opens the door to have that conversation. And it doesn't have to be like this black and white, either a personal testimony or a logical argument. I think you can slide in your personal testimony using some of this stuff we've gone over.
Tools in a toolbox.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sometimes I need a hammer. Sometimes I need a, needle nose pliers. Sometimes I need a blowtorch. Dynamite. All right, so if we're going to do this,
I was gonna say, how do you even initiate that? I suppose.
well, if you're a believer, why? You believe the fantasy. What makes you even think there's a God?
All right. Well, I would probably start with.
No, you're role playing. Not I would probably start with do it.
Yeah,
Well, I would. It depends on what the person's like. What argument do you think would work best?
I don't know. Go ahead. I'm going to be a naysayer. I'm going to give you problems.
Okay.
What do you?
Then I would probably start with.
Why do you believe? What do you believe that nonsense for?
All right. So, do you think that, like, all right, let's set a foundation. You believe we're real, right? Everything here exists, and
Yeah,
all right.
things exist. Yeah.
So, where did all that come from? Do you think?
Big Bang.
All right.
See, what happened was there were millions and billions of years. There was the Big Bang. There were billions of years. All the galaxies formed, and it was hot gas and lava, and then in the primordial soup, all the chemicals mixed, and then the slimy swamp creature cried out. They had single cell form, and then that grew and evolved, and at first it was reptiles, and then birds, and then people, and then all the people. That's what it is.
Some people go off.
And when you believe in some fantasy fairy tale god that just woo.
So let's rewind that for a second because you've gone on a long stream of the timeline. Let's go back to the origination of that. There was I call it the bigger banger. There was somebody who caused that moment in time. Do you think it
Somebody?
just happened
Somebody?
by itself? Do things just randomly pop into, somebody, a mind, a logos is what I would call it. But let's just first establish that things don't just randomly appear, correct?
Yeah.
Everything that begins had a cause to it. Cars don't just randomly disappear and appear.
They're
Things
doing
don't just pop into
video
existence.
games.
Yeah, but that's not reality.
I've actually had that argument.
Ironically, like the world is like a video game to God, I suppose
Yeah.
you could say that.
Sure.
Oh, well, even the video game has a creator that coded everything. But,
Sure, things don't just randomly appear. And,
All right.
Yeah, and I guess there is cause and effect. Something causes something to happen. Sure.
So what do you?
Wait a minute. You giving him that?
I think things cause other things to happen,
I think that's a normal point that things don't just randomly appear.
but it doesn't mean it's God.
Yeah, but
Sure, but then I would ask,
Doesn't mean it's God.
who do
Yeah.
why?
Could be the flying spaghetti monster. There's a multiverse.
It could be
There's
a
an
whole lot
infinite
of
number of
things.
universes and we just happen to be in the best one. There's other universes where it's just all blob, but all the infinite number of universes, we just happen to be in the one. And you're using that as a red herring because you got lucky. You should be happy that you're in the one that happened.
All right. So my point on that is you're kind of just circling back to it just randomly happened because you're saying that everything seems to be so perfectly crafted. We just got the jackpot universe. Do you really think that we just happened to get the jackpot universe? Where's the reason in that to turn that back on you? Why would you think that? If you
Well-
want to talk about it's silly for me to believe, in a God and a creator, you're arguing that everything just works together magically, and we just happen to be observers in the correct universe.
Yeah, there is some value to that point of view that it could be that way, right? It could be.
All right. So I guess
So I'll give you that something caused it to start.
so you think, well, something or somebody, because you haven't given me a something. We've kind of circled around to this point that it all seems to be designed. And if it's designed, that seems to imply that there's a design.
Well, not necessarily that it's designed. It just evolved. Things just it's natural selection as things got bad, as the weaker things fell off, the things that worked bubbled up, and that's how we got to where we are, and it just built until we got to where we are now.
Yeah, but even if it could, even if let's say that buildings could assemble themselves, let's say, even if I just gave you that point, the materials came from somewhere. There was an origination.
Yeah.
You haven't given me that yet. You're talking about after we've reached that point. You haven't given me an origination.
Yeah,
What is
well, I
this?
don't.
Why do you think it's a something instead of a somebody?
Well, why would it be? It's something. I mean, I don't know if there's a someone. You're saying that there's someone out there. I have no evidence that there's someone out there. Something. Okay, I'll give you something caused it. Then
All right.
it started. It started, and it's just something had to cause the start. Had to
Sure.
come from somewhere.
So here, I'll give you the reason why I think it's a somebody, or at least that there's a logical background, almost like an author to the book. Like even if you, here's why I don't think like the book wrote itself. Let's say is that everything seems to be designed so intricately,
Hmm.
and we see this in, and I probably go over this third, but I'm trying to remember it in my head right now. But like the second law of thermodynamics, we know that the universe didn't just pop into existence by itself. So we know something had to be a startup. We've gotten there.
Hmm.
We see from like the distance of the Earth from the sun is just right.
Hmm.
The gravitational constant in the universe for the formation of galaxies is just right. The amount of oxygen, if there's too much, we would randomly combust. Not enough, we choke out and die. The atomic forces holding nuclei together, the protons and neutrons together, that's just right. All these things align together perfectly in the universe. And that kind of demonstrates that it's a very unlikely, if you want to argue from a in a probabilistic manner, it's very unlikely that it was just random or that it was something. There seems to be logic, a mind behind the way everything is orchestrated. That's why I would think that.
Or it could be lucky.
Yeah, now I like what you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gave a reason for why you believe, not
Yeah.
that he got accepted.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because now you've given logical step by step why I believe this. Because you don't want to get into challenging him. He challenged you as to why do you believe. Well, this, and you're going to use logic.
Ironically, this is probably the part where I would turn it around on them though and be like, lucky? Why do you think it's just lucky? And usually that's when you'll start to get people like,
Because there isn't a God. Yeah, he killed my father. That's usually
what-
what you find out. You get the emotional.
That's what I was going to say. And that's opens the door for you, ironically. And that's kind of what it's getting at is like that conversation got you to the point where it's like, well, I don't think there's a God because blank.
I was cornered in my mind, but not by your aggressiveness.
I did turn it back because
I get kind of, I get, like, okay, I see, yeah.
Well, yeah, I can only speak for maybe I'm only speaking for me. You turning it back on me would do no good. Because that if I don't believe, no, it's gonna have to be for me why you believe. And then I gotta logically walk through. Yeah, that makes sense. Turning it back on me is that I already told you I don't believe. So if you're gonna try to turn it back on me.
I think it's both. I think you have to demonstrate there's two different worldviews.
Mm-hmm.
There's two different paradigms we're living in, and you're just trying to show them that, well, first off, that you're not just insane fairy tale, that opens the conversation up. The other thing is that there's actually, like, I would argue, compelling reasons to believe
Yeah, exactly.
in one worldview. And especially when they start, sometimes they go down, and they won't always go down the route, but like, if they said we could just be lucky,
Mhm.
that's when I kind of like, okay, well, and that depends again, you kind of get a read. If they're hostile, you can kind of be like, well, hey, you were just saying, why do I believe? And like, it's such a crazy thing to think, but you're just saying it's luck. That's not, if they're more inquisitive, usually I'll kind of go the same route, but I'll be like, what do you think?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You gotta figure out where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, like you were, it kind of cornered. It was like it's kind of stupid to say Well, what if you're just lucky, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you got at some point it's like you're making some interesting points. Of
Yeah.
what if? That's that what if you're planting
Yeah.
that seed in there. Will that
Because you keep walking down the logic train, then what's going to happen is I'm my explanation won't have logic to it, other than I just don't agree with you.
right?
I, and like I said, I can sit there and listen to you, and as you walk through the logic of why you believe,
Mhm.
now I got to walk through why do I disbelieve what you just said.
And that's what I'm saying.
That-
That in my mind, it kind of corners me
That's
in my
what's
mind.
interesting too, because I think this is everybody will give you a logical reason, but not everybody has. They'll give you it's like a barricade they put
Sure,
a lot of the time.
absolutely.
So I think that's why a lot of this is important, even if you want to get to personal testimony and you don't want to have to get into all the books, because once you get them down into the point where they're like, well, it's not really a logical problem I'm having, then they'll split off into, this is why
Mhm.
I don't, this is why I really don't believe, but that's saying the time
Yeah,
part out loud. But
if you get them to that point where something happened in their life or some reason they turned and they don't.
yeah,
But like I said, so again, everybody has that what I believe how God uses you
yeah,
in terms of the way you can witness to someone. I absolutely believe that with my whole heart. There's people the way I witness, I would never get through to them.
sure. I think for most people, like even just a moral argument, that's a very easy
I was waiting for you to go there.
I was gonna say, well,
I was waiting for
if
you
you're
to close me on that and go, okay.
if you're belligerent, it's better to just go straight to just here's just the facts that I know of, because if you're scientifically minded, that's what when you said you were gonna be, go down that route of okay, well, with those people, again, the teleological is gonna be best. Moral argument is more, it depends, but for example, if you were trying to make this argument to like Alex O'Connor, let's say, you would just say, okay, moral argument, it's just relativist. And then, you can go down, but until you get him into mentioning frameworks and stuff, he will just say, I'm a moral relativist.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to
can
live in a
point out
nihilistic
problems with
world,
that, but he'll just, give you
if you want to be like cold, that's isn't that psychotic? Like if you just have no moral conscience, you just I can cut out their heart and just
yeah.
watch them scream, and I don't care because it doesn't affect me.
But that's like the new, then, the new atheists try to have their cake and eat it too. The old atheists kind of just say, yeah, there's no morality. So it kind of depends which group you're with. Like Dawkins will just say, too bad, it's just all relativistic, or Alex will say, too bad, it's all relativistic.
So yeah, I mean, I guess I don't think I think most people don't want to live in that everything
Well,
they
they
believe is
know.
arbitrary.
I'm not
Like
saying it's a bad argument. I'm just saying that if
you're
it's
LARPing.
not, it's the wrong.
You're LARPing. You're live
Well,
action
some
role
people say
playing
that's how it
morality.
is. Yeah,
Yeah, because it's not. If you really think it's all relative and it's all nonsense, you're just pretending to play
it's
along.
just not the first point I would go to with somebody who's thinking along those lines. Typically, it's again, it depends on the audience. Like with somebody who's some people, you can just know they're very I don't say emotional, but they're very in tune with how they have a personal set of values. That's the type of person that the moral argument really strikes at, because if you can be cold and separated and say, well, what if rape is good?
Yeah.
They'll just plunge right into, it doesn't mean that's, so that's kind of where they'll go, is so I don't, it's not a bad direction, but it's just not the direction I go, because there's more blockades they can put up, because they can just,
Be
Matt
obstinate.
Dillahunty, they can just say,
I'm just not convinced.
yeah,
I'm
I
just
mean,
not convinced.
yeah, but
Yeah,
That's what Dillahunty does. Yeah.
If that's what their way of rejecting what you just told them is, I got easy. So what? No
usually,
matter what you tell me.
Yeah.
So what?
There's some people that are that way, but I mean, God.
But the good thing, like you said, you're making the argument. You're telling them. You're planting the seed.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
it's like an initiator too. It's it gets you to that point you want to have, if that's the point you want to have. Some people are just genuinely curious or have hiccups, but usually if you're trying to get to that, you've got to break down the walls that they set up.
I just try to get people to think. I think, is it possible? Here's, I don't, I'm not trying to win you over, convince you. I don't want your checkbook. I'm just trying to, what if?
What if?
I'm just
Right.
sharing stuff because it made me think and it changed my life. Right. And so now I feel compelled to share because it was so transformative and it is the whole purpose and meaning of life to me. And I'm called and commanded to go therefore and share, making disciples, and that's what we're trying to do. So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to give pebbles in the shoe, tools in your toolbox to share.
I just think that perspective works. But when you talk about, hey, it worked, I'm just, what if it worked for me? Here's why. It it breaks. It causes the person that you can't get defensive if I'm telling you why I believe. It's not I'm telling you you have to believe.
Right.
This is why I believe. This is why I read. These are my reasons. You can't get defensive about why I believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when people realize that you're just sharing, you're not trying to like be right. You're just trying to share. Like I've run into that. It's just so funny how it transitions. I've had people be so resistant and belligerent towards me when they think I'm trying to be right and judge them. And I'm like,
Or
I'm just as bad as you are, if not worse.
you can tell when you're making inroads when they're upset that you believe something and you accept it, and they want to attack you for it because you say I believe the word. This is why I believe the things I know. No, you can't believe that. What do you mean I can't believe that? I have evidence. I believe this is why. Well, why? You're starting to get inroads.
Yeah, you're changing the foundational structure of where they believe, right?
Exactly.
And when he was saying that people present these simplest argument, it's almost like a really pretty wrapping on a horrible gift. Like, look, I got this bow, and look, see how pretty it is? It's the greatest gift ever, right? And then you say, okay, well, let's unwrap that. Wow, that's socks. That's socks for Christmas.
Yeah, you believe that? Wow.
I
So
think a lot of people also are like initially aggressive because, well, Satan lies to them. I mean, just to say bluntly, because it's a lot of the times it's a misconception. Like you'll get a lot of this, like, why does God send people to hell? Well, he's just a judge. Does the judge arbitrarily decide to just,
send people to jail.
yeah, like, if anything, it's not believe in me or you go to hell in the sense that I send you to hell. It's you're going to go to hell by default. The default position is you're going to hell, and he's throwing the rope down to save you, and you're batting it away and saying, "Dang,
Why you
am
hit me
I-"
with that life preserver while I'm in the ocean? I'm trying to keep above water here.
certain things like that. So when you start, giving like rational explanations for these things, it really does open doors because again, it shows that first off, you're demonstrating you're just not dogmatic. You're not just like I believe it. That's that.
Right. Exactly.
I just act unquestioningly, axiomatically. This is my system that I'm within. That opens doors. Another thing is like you'll get to like little things like that. Although that's splitting off from this somewhat, but like some of the misconceptions can come from this stuff. But this is more like a conversation starter or like interesting points to give. But I do think it's interesting that a lot of like the thinking you have to do for this in terms of presentation, you'll get with a lot of those types of arguments that people will give you for like, they'll give you a lot of those. And again, I would say like layer one arguments are, it's easier to think of it as a wall or like, I guess wrapping paper, but I really think of it as a wall because it's just a quick justification to just be like.
A lot of times it's because they've been traumatized with something that
Yeah, it's usually something personal
in their life.
Yeah.
And they're blaming God because the devil's telling them.
Yeah.
Put stuff in their mind. Oh, by the way, this happened. By this person that this loved one died, and the devil's telling them in their head that it was God that did it.
Yeah, it's just misconceptions are like, why are you sending me to hell? Why did this
that's why
person
they put
die?
the wall there, and you're trying to knock that wall down.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, yeah.
Well, it's good, man. As usual, you know your stuff, so.
Yeah, this is more my forte. So like.
That's good. All right. Well, do we have any questions before we close out? I don't think we covered it all. All right. Hey, did it go back? It went back. All right. So I'll just give you more stuff to do. If you want to flex some of this, that's what I did. Hey, man, just something bugging me. What's your opinion? I want your opinion on something. What do you do? Do you think there's a God? That's basically what I started that conversation with. And then he was like, yeah. He looked at me like, yeah, idiot. It was funny. He probably knows I shared in the gym before, right? I was just
Yeah.
anyway. So it's funny. So you could try that with somebody and then maybe flex it or like bring it up. Hey, this idiot that I'm listening to this class, he's making us ask people questions. What do you think? And then you could say,
This is more
what do you think of these? All right, what do you think about these points? You could share one, right? If you haven't done so, hey, now try it. Just get out there and share. Get out and you're talking to people. I'm just trying to encourage people to go out and talk and share and reach more folks. And I think that's it, right? That's everything. All right, so that's the end of the show. So we'll close out. We close this down. We'll close out for the day.